Hello and welcome to this learning session on the Moore Industries SPA2 configuration software. In this session we are focusing on the high-level SPA2 and we'll be looking at the Alarms tab here. So let me jump over to the Alarms tab, but before we make any changes here, be sure to stop the unit from monitoring. That way we can make the changes with impunity. Alright, now you notice that this instrument I have here has 4 alarms. I only have to cover 1 alarm because they're all identical, but they can be individually set depending on your requirements of your application. So, anyhow, you notice we'll start right here on the top with the mode. You have the trip mode, the fault mode, and the rate of change. And you notice if you, depending on which one you click, down below here you'll see the options change depending on which mode of alarm you're going to use. So right now we use the trip alarm, and the trip alarm is set very easily. You set a trip point. Right now it's set at 12 milliamps with the deadband of 0. It can be either defined as a high alarm or low alarm. A high alarm meaning that when you go higher than the trip point, the relay will change stage, and a low alarm if you go below the trip point, the relay will change stage. You can also have a delay in here. You can put the number of seconds that you want to delay the trip if that's what you want. So, and the alarm can be either fail-safe or non-fail-safe. Fail-safe meaning that if you go into alarm and the SPA2 loses power, it will stay in alarm. And certain fail-safe. Non-fail-safe, when it goes into alarm, if you lose power, you are not going to be in alarm any longer because the relay will drop out, of course. And you have the option of the alarm being latching or non-latching. If it is set to latching, the only way you're going to release the relay is on the top of the SPA2, you'll see 2 terminals, and they're labeled MR, which means manual reset, or manual release, whichever way you want to think about it. So if you connect a push button to those terminals, you can release the relay by a push of the button. Now note that you cannot release the relay if the instrument is still in alarm. Only when it's out of alarm, then you can release it. And whatever changes you make on this page, you can send down to the instrument via the quick set button that you see right here. But before we do that, let's look at a few other options we have here. Okay, we'll talk about the fault settings if you want your alarm to be a fault relay. And the cases where you're going to fault is input saturation or a SPA2 failure. So, and that's the SPA2 runs its own diagnostics. If it finds something wrong with itself, you will go into a fault condition. And same with the input saturation. If you drive the input too high, you go into saturation, or if you drive it too low, you can go into input saturation the other direction as well. And again, you still have the same delay, fail-safe, non-fail-safe, and latching options. Okay, and lastly, we'll look at the rate of change alarm. And here it is. So right now, my input is 4 to 20 milliamps. So if I say, well, if it changes by 5 milliamps in a 10-second time frame, for my application, that is not very good. That means something's moving maybe too fast. So, and that is how you set up the rate of change. You still have the fail-safe, non-fail-safe, and matching options there. So, and 2 other boxes I haven't discussed yet are the input failure and out of range. Those can be set. All 3 you can set as trip, input failure, and out of range. Same with the fault. You can still set these 2 down here. One thing to make note of, though, let's say if I'm using this as a trip alarm, and I do click on these options, and I get an alarm, I'm not sure if it's a trip, an input failure, or an out of range alarm. So beware of that. Let's talk about, okay, input failure. That means if you have a broken wire condition, that is considered an input failure, and that'll trip this alarm. Out of range, you set the range yourself. My range on the input page over here is set right now at 4 to 20 milliamps. So I can say, okay, anything below 0 or above 25, I want an out-of-range alarm for that, because that's something maybe a little too severe for your application, so you want to make sure you get alarmed on that. So let's turn these off for now. I'll leave it pretty much the way I found it. Trip at 12 milliamps with a deadband of 0. It's going to be a high alarm, fail-safe at matching. Just to make sure that that's what I have in there, I will hit the quick step button, and that'll download that. This page right here for alarms 1 and 2, it'll download it to the instrument. It's asking me to confirm that. You see the progress bar changing here, and there you have it. And remember, all alarms 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 are all identical, and they can be set individually. So some units only have 2 alarms, some have 4, depending on how you purchased it. So there you go. And that's the end of this learning session. The next learning session, if you're interested, we'll be discussing the analog output page, and I hope to see you then. Thank you.